After rebirth, I resolved to stop putting out fires. My husband lost his pride, and my white moonlight lost its beauty. Main text: choking smoke seeped into my lungs, carrying scorching heat that nearly seared my breath away. I snapped awake, not to the cold white funeral banners, nor to that heart-wrenching suicide note. Instead, flickering flames lapped at the rafters, black soot rained down, and the air was so scorching it could bake a person dry. This was the western wing of the Yoning Marquis mansion, the very fire that changed my life forever. My fingertips touched a smooth palm, devoid of the thin calluses from a decade of toil. I wore a plain-colored qipao, not the brocades and silks befitting a future marquis. I had truly returned, back to the 12th year of Yongchang, back to the night my nightmare began. Cough. Brother Anhui, I'm so scared. A delicate, tearful voice pierced through the crackling of flames, stabbing my eardrums. I looked up. Through the flickering flames and thick smoke, Xiao Anhui held Li Sisi tightly in his arms. His usually cool and distant eyes were now filled with anxiety and heartache, a tenderness I had never once seen in the 10 years I had been by his side. Don't be afraid, Sisi. I'll risk my life to keep you safe. His voice was resolute as he shielded her from flying sparks with his body. Clinging to each other, they moved toward the small window not far away. It was their only path to survival, the very place I had risked half my life to break through in my past life, then turned back to pull them out. But this time, I wouldn't. Images from my past life flooded back like a tidal wave, my back, scorched by flames, flesh peeling back, my face, ravaged by deep scars. Yet Xiao Anhui married me out of guilt, driven by others' whispers and finger-pointing. For 10 years, he never set foot in my room. His final letter before death condemned me to hell. Marrying you was merely a duty. Touching you disgusts me. All the family fortune goes to Sisi. My nails dug deep into my palms, the pain jolting me into sharp clarity. Why should your love demand I bury myself in a lifetime of agony? Watching them embrace as they moved toward that window, cold hatred churned in my eyes. I spun around and sprinted to the window. Debris piled outside, the flames hadn't spread yet, the perfect moment to escape. Without hesitation, I shoved the nearby low cabinet with all my strength, wedging it firmly against the window frame. With a thunderous crash, the wooden cabinet locked into place, sealing off their escape route completely. Li Sisi's startled cry faintly reached me, "Brother Anhui, the window won't open." I let out a cold laugh, refusing to look back. Guided by memories from my past life, I sprinted toward the hidden exit tucked in the corner of the room. There was a passageway hidden behind an old cabinet, discovered only by those who came later. The flames hadn't yet completely sealed it off. Scorching air seared my skin. Behind me, the thunderous crash of beams collapsing echoed, mingled with Xiao Anhui's furious roar and Li Sisi's shrieks. I knew the beams had fallen. This time, no one would rush in to save them. Passing through the narrow passageway, the cool, damp night wind instantly enveloped me. Its fresh scent of grass and trees washed away the smoke and heat clinging to my body. Standing safely in the courtyard, I slowly turned around. The wing house before me had been completely engulfed by the fire dragon. Flames shot skyward, lighting up half the night sky. Wails, cries for help, and the splashing of water mingled into a chaotic din. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the center of that sea of fire. No one noticed which corner I had emerged from. The night wind lifted my scattered strands of hair, brushing against my cheeks, smudged with soot yet unharmed. As I watched the dancing flames, the chill that had weighed on my heart for a decade finally began to thaw beneath the fiery heat. Xiao Anhui, Li Sisi, this lifetime, I'll see how you two star-crossed lovers escape this inferno without my life-risking rescue. The flames burned for most of the night, finally dying down as dawn broke. The old woman settled me in a side courtyard. Though the soot had long been washed from my body, the mingled scent of smoke and charred flesh lingered in my nostrils. Just as I lifted the warm tea to my lips, chaotic footsteps echoed outside the courtyard, intertwined with the heart-wrenching wails of the Marquis of Yoning's wife. "My son! Anhui! You must not come to harm." I set down the teacup, my eyes utterly still. In my previous life, I had listened to her cries in the same way, believing she truly cherished me as her life-saving benefactor. Yet in the end, she had merely acquiesced to her son's decade-long coldness toward me. Soon after, a maid rushed in to report, her voice trembling with alarm, Miss Zhao, the young master and the cousin. They've been rescued. But they're terribly injured. I feigned surprise as I rose. How could they be gravely injured? That window was clearly their only escape route. The maid's face was deathly pale. Somehow, the window was blocked by a chest. The young master shielded the young lady and was struck in the leg by a falling beam. The imperial physician said his kneecap is shattered. It's likely. He may never walk upright again. A shattered kneecap, crippled for life. My hand holding the teacup paused slightly. The warm tea rippled, reflecting the fleeting satisfaction in my eyes. What about Sister Cece? I pressed, my voice laced with just the right amount of concern. The young lady hasn't fared well either, the maid sighed. Her face and arms were burned, leaving many scars. Her throat was also damaged by the smoke, leaving her voice hoarse and raspy. She can't even cry properly now. I lowered my eyelashes, concealing the cold glint in my eyes. Disfigurement, a broken voice, crippled legs, this was the fate they deserved. That afternoon, the Duchess of Yongning summoned me to the main courtyard. The moment I stepped inside, the pungent scent of medicine filled the air. Xiao Anhui lay on a four-poster bed, his entire body swathed in bandages, only his pale face exposed. His right leg was immobilized by a wooden splint, his posture a pitiful sight. Li Cece lay on a nearby daybed, her face swathed in bandages, only her swollen red eyes visible. The moment she saw me enter, her eyes flashed with venomous hatred. Qiao Wanyu. It was you. You deliberately blocked the window. Her voice was hoarse and unpleasant, like a broken gong. You wanted to kill us. My footsteps faltered, and I immediately adopted a look of hurt, my eyes reddening. Sis Cece, how could you accuse me so unfairly? The fire was raging so fiercely, I barely escaped with my life. How could I have had the presence of mind to block the window? Perhaps the cabinet warped in the heat and slid over on its own? You're lying. Li Cece struggled to sit up, but the movement tugged at her wounds, making her gasp in pain. Just then, Xiao Anhui on the bed let out a faint moan and slowly opened his eyes. His gaze was cloudy as it swept over Li Cece before finally settling on my face. Recognizing me, he managed to choke out two words, Wan. You. My heart sank. He called me? Not Cece, but me? In my past life, he hadn't even bothered to utter my name before dying. Yet now, just awakening from a coma after severe injury, I was the first he called. A preposterous yet only plausible thought surged through my mind, he had reincarnated too. He must have returned to the moment after writing his suicide note. He must have learned how wretchedly I suffered after his death, realized that his deep affection for Li Cece was built upon my bones. That's why he called my name in his delirium, why his gaze held such complexity. I forced down the storm raging within, maintaining my usual gentle, concerned expression as I walked slowly to the bedside. Your Highness, you're awake. How do you feel? Xiao Anhui looked at me, his eyes churning with pain, regret, and a flicker of wild joy at finding me again. His lips moved, but too weak to form coherent words, he only repeated, Wanyu. I'm sorry. Li Cece stood beside him, staring in stunned silence before letting out a hoarse scream, Anhui. Why are you calling her? I'm right here. I disfigured myself for you. How could you call her name? Xiao Anhui's brow furrowed. The look he gave Li Cece held none of his usual tenderness, replaced instead by a barely perceptible flicker of irritation and weariness. That fleeting weariness vanished in an instant, yet I saw it clearly. A cold laugh echoed in my heart. Xiao Anhui, have you grown weary of your white moonlight too? Is it because she's no longer perfect, reduced to this hideous state? What a fitting retribution. I lowered my eyes, avoiding Xiao Anhui's gaze, my voice soft yet distant, Your Highness has just awakened. It's unwise to get worked up. You should rest peacefully. Cece, you mustn't overexert yourself either, it would be unwise to harm your health. With that, I turned and curtsied to the Dowager of Yongning, Madam, both the young master and my sister require rest. I shan't disturb them further and shall return another day. Stepping out of the main courtyard, the sunlight was blinding, yet I felt an icy chill throughout my body. Xiao Anhui had also been reborn. This was unexpected. But so what? His repentance came too late, his regret too cheap. A decade of cold neglect, a final letter of severance, those wounds were etched into my very bones. They couldn't be erased with a simple "I'm sorry." This time around, I wouldn't just distance myself from him. I would make him and Li Sisi pay the most painful price for their actions. Xiao Anhuai's repentance came swiftly and relentlessly. Within 3 days, he sent a servant bearing a jade hairpin, claiming it was an old possession of mine he'd risked his life to salvage from the flames. Staring at the unfamiliar jade hairpin, my fingertips grew cold. He certainly knew how to spin tales, even inventing such deceptive lies. "Thank the crown prince for me," I instructed my maid to accept the hairpin, my tone flat. "But my mind is unsettled now. I fear I am unworthy of wearing something so precious. I shall put it away for the time being." After the servant returned with his report, not half a day later, a matron brought in a bowl of rock sugar bird's nest soup. She said Xiao Anhui had specifically ordered the kitchen to stew it for me, to nourish my body and calm my spirit. "Miss Xiao, the young master said he knows he wronged you in the past and will make it up to you properly from now on." The matron smiled obsequiously, her words thick with implication about Xiao Anhuai's concern for me. I lifted the bowl, inhaling its rich, sweet aroma, yet my stomach churned. In my previous life, I had stewed countless soups and porridges, delivering them to his doorstep. He never touched a single bite, giving them all to the servants instead. This belated compensation now struck me as nothing but bitter irony. "Please convey my response, mother." I set down the bird's nest, my face wearing just the right amount of flattered surprise, though my eyes held no warmth. "The young master is gravely injured and ought to focus on nourishing himself. As a coarse person, I'm unaccustomed to such precious delicacies. Best send it to Sister Sisi instead, her injuries are equally severe." I deliberately mentioned Li Sisi. Sure enough, the matron's smile stiffened. She mumbled a response and hurried away with the bird's nest. I knew my aloofness and consideration would only deepen Xiao Anhuai's guilt. Reborn and aware of his past life's outcome, he believed a simple "I regret it" and some compensation would make me forgive and forget, returning to that foolish, obedient state where I'd follow his every word. But he forgot that some wounds, once inflicted, can never be mended. In the days that followed, Xiao Anhui tried every trick to win me back. He sent fabrics, pastries, even had his servant deliver letters written in his own hand. Every word dripped with remorse, how he'd been blind and foolish, mistaking fish eyes for pearls, how he asked only for your forgiveness this lifetime, nothing more. I never replied to a single letter, never accepted a single gift. I maintained a surface of docile politeness while deliberately keeping my distance. When he sent people to invite me to visit him, I declined, citing fear of disturbing his rest or worry that Sister Sisi might misunderstand. When he wanted me to keep him company, I had my maid reply that I was restless and needed to shut myself away to rest. I intended to make him yearn in vain, to taste the very rejection I endured when I once desperately sought his tenderness. That day, as I read in the courtyard, Xiao Anhui unexpectedly arrived at my side courtyard, pushed in a wheelchair by a servant. He wore a moonlight brocade robe, his complexion still pale, though far less haggard than before. Yet with his legs immobilized by wooden splints, seated in that wheelchair, he lacked the upright bearing of days past. "Wan Yu," he called my name, his voice hoarse yet tinged with cautious flattery. I set down my book, rose to curtsy, and replied coolly, "Your Highness graces us with your presence. My apologies for not greeting you properly." He maneuvered his wheelchair closer, his eyes brimming with unmistakable remorse. "Wan Yu, I know you're still angry. I don't blame you. It was all my fault before. I shouldn't have neglected you, shouldn't have let you suffer so much. Give me another chance, please." He reached out, seemingly to touch my hand. I instinctively took a step back, avoiding his contact. Xiao Anhuai's hand froze midair. The smile on his face instantly froze, a flicker of embarrassment passing in his eyes. "Your Highness," I lowered my eyelashes, my voice soft yet firm, "let bygones be bygones. I only wish to rest peacefully now, without stirring up those troublesome memories. You are the heir to the Marquis' estate, with boundless prospects ahead. There's no need to waste your time on me." "Waste my time?" Xiao Anhuai's voice shot up sharply, tinged with a sting of wounded pride. "Wan Yu, In your heart, does my affection for you amount to nothing but wasted time? Your Highness jests. I lifted my gaze to meet his, my eyes calm and still. You know full well who truly occupies your heart. I am merely a disfigured, abandoned woman. I deliberately brought up the scar from my past life to test his reaction. How could I ever presume to claim your affection? Sure enough, at the words disfigured, Xiao Anhuai's expression shifted, a flicker of panic and guilt crossing his eyes. He hurriedly protested, Wan Yu, that's not what I meant. I was foolish back then, Your Highness, there's no need for explanations, I cut him off, my voice tinged with weariness. Your injuries haven't fully healed. You should return soon to rest. This place is remote, I fear I cannot offer you proper hospitality. My tone was firm, leaving no room for negotiation. Xiao Anhuai stared at me, his expression complex, filled with reluctance, anger, and a hint of indescribable hurt. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but in the end, he only sighed heavily. He let the servant push his wheelchair away, leaving reluctantly. Watching his retreating figure, I slowly clenched my fists. Xiao Anhuai, this is only the beginning. What you owe me, I will reclaim bit by bit, with interest. Your repentance, your compensation, to me, they are worthless. Barely 2 days after Xiao Anhuai left, Li Sisi came knocking. She wore no veil, the crisscrossing red marks and unhealed wounds on her face glaring harshly in the sunlight. Her voice was hoarse, as if sandpaper had scraped it raw. The moment she entered, she cut straight to the chase, her eyes so venomous they seemed to drip poison. Xiao Wanyu. What kind of mind-altering potion did you feed Brother Anhuai? I was seated by the window reading when I heard her. Slowly lifting my gaze, I wore just the right amount of surprise and innocence. Sis Sisi, what do you mean by that? I don't understand. Stop playing dumb. She stormed toward me in a few strides, breathless, the scar on her face flushing purplish red with fury. Brother Anhuai only has eyes for you now. He sends you this and that, won't even take his medicine unless you're there. You must be so pleased with yourself. Seeing me reduced to this monstrous state, watching Brother Anhuai crippled, you're absolutely delighted, aren't you? Her voice was shrill and piercing, like nails scraping wood, making one's scalp crawl. I set down my book, stood up, and took a step back to create distance, my tone still gentle. Sis, your words are strange. If the Crown Prince cares for me, how could I possibly control that? As for feeling smug, seeing both of you, one gravely injured, the other disfigured, what exactly is there to feel smug about? Do you really think me the sort to gloat over others' misfortune? You are. Li Sisi screamed, lunging to claw at my face. If you hadn't stood by and watched me burn, deliberately blocking the window, how would I have ended up like this? How would Brother Anhuai have become lame? It's all your fault. I'd anticipated this, sidestepping her claws and stepping back 2 paces. My foot caught on something, sending me stumbling and crashing into a chair. My eyes instantly reddened, my voice breaking with tears. Sister, how could you make such a vicious accusation? The fire was raging so fiercely, I barely escaped with my life myself. How could I possibly have saved you? If I truly had that kind of power, how could I have stood by and watched the Crown Prince and you suffer such a catastrophe? Tears welled up instantly, streaming down my cheeks. I bit my lip in anguish, looking utterly wronged and speechless. You're lying. You could have saved us. Li Sisi continued to shout, though her intensity weakened slightly at the sight of my tears. Just then, footsteps sounded outside the courtyard gate. Xiao Anhuai was pushed in on a wheelchair by a servant. He had clearly heard the argument inside, his expression dark and ominous. Sisi, who gave you permission to come here and cause trouble? His voice was hoarse, laced with undisguised irritation and anger. Spotting Xiao Anhuai, Li Sisi clung to him like a lifeline, sobbing as she threw herself at him. Brother Anhuai, you must stop her. She's the one who ruined us. And now she's playing the victim. Xiao Anhuai frowned, instinctively reaching to push her away, yet hesitating due to their past connection. His gaze fell on my reddened eyes and tear-streaked face, a flicker of pity crossing his eyes before his tone grew colder. Enough. Have you finished causing trouble? I know exactly what kind of person Wan Yu is. She wouldn't do something like this. You know? You don't know anything. Li Sisi cried heart-wrenchingly. You only see her playing the victim, but you've forgotten who disfigured herself for you. Who stayed by your side all these years. Brother Anhui, have you forgotten you promised to love only me? Don't bring up the past, Xiao Anhui said, his voice tinged with weariness and impatience. I don't want to hear this now. Go back. I won't. Li Sisi stood stubbornly her ground, her gaze fixed on me. Unless she admits she did it on purpose. Unless she swears she'll stop bothering you. Xiao Anhui's expression darkened completely, the disgust in his eyes impossible to hide. I said, go back. Don't make me repeat myself a third time. His voice carried the authority of the home mansion's heir apparent. Li Sisi flinched at his shout, her sobs abruptly halting. She stared at Xiao Anhui in disbelief, her eyes brimming with hurt and despair. Her lips trembled, yet no words came out. Finally, as if drained of all strength, she staggered back several steps. She shot me a venomous glance before turning and running out, sobbing. The courtyard fell instantly silent. Xiao Anhui maneuvered his wheelchair closer to me. The gloom faded from his face, replaced by a gentle expression. Wan Yu, are you all right? Did she hurt you? I shook my head, wiping away tears, my voice thick with emotion. I'm fine. Just feeling wronged. How could Sister Sisi think of me like that? Don't take it to heart, Xiao Anhui said, his gaze filled with pity. She's deeply wounded and unsettled, so she speaks without thinking. I'll speak with her. She won't be disturbing you again. Your Highness, there's no need to trouble yourself. I lowered my lashes, my tone tinged with cautious detachment. After all, it was for you that my sister became this way. I understand the bond between you. I only wish to live quietly, untouched by these conflicts. My words pierced Xiao Anhui's heart like a thorn. The smile froze on his face as he looked at me with a complex expression. Wan Yu, what happened between her and me is long gone. Now, you are the only one in my heart. Your Highness, I interrupted, my tone firming. I know you feel guilty now and wish to make amends. But matters of the heart cannot be forced. All I desire now is to recuperate in peace. I truly wish to think of nothing else. With that, I rose and bowed to him. Your Highness, your injuries have not yet healed. You should return to rest. I shall not see you off. Xiao Anhui watched my resolute retreat, his mouth opening and closing before he could utter a word. He fixed me with a lingering gaze, tinged with reluctance and resignation, then had his servant push his wheelchair away. Watching his retreating figure, the hurt on my face vanished without a trace, replaced only by cold derision. Li Sisi, Xiao Anhui, your little drama has only just begun. The more you entangle yourselves, the more you hate each other, the clearer I see your true faces, the stronger my resolve to leave becomes. This lifetime, I will never again be deceived by your hypocrisy and feigned affection. I will never repeat the same mistakes. Xiao Anhui's clinging grew more relentless, Li Sisi's resentment deepened daily, and the peace of the side courtyard was shattered completely. I knew I had to escape this suffocating situation quickly, or they would inevitably drag me into an even deeper quagmire. But I never imagined Xiao Anhui would stoop to such despicable acts. That night, the moonlight was dim, and the north wind howled against the window panes. Restless and easily awakened, I half heard a faint click outside the door, as if someone were manipulating the latch with a slender object. My heart leapt into my throat, every hair on my body standing on end. Who was it? Holding my breath, I reached under my pillow for the silver hairpin I'd sharpened long ago, my precaution against the unexpected. The latch was slowly pried open, the gap widening until a cold breeze, heavy with the scent of alcohol, swept in. Then, a dark figure slipped silently through the opening, stumbling slightly, breathing heavily. It was Xiao Anhui. He had actually sneaked into my room drunk in the dead of night. A wave of disgust and rage instantly overwhelmed my reason. In my past life, he shunned me like a venomous snake. This lifetime, after rebirth, his feigned repentance, it was all a lie. The selfishness and baseness in his very bones had never changed. The shadowy figure groped toward the bed, the stench of alcohol growing stronger. I clutched the silver hairpin so tightly my fingertips turned white, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst from my chest. Just as his drunken form neared the bedside, I sprang upright with a jolt. Summoning every ounce of strength, I thrust the silver hairpin toward him with all my might. Ugh! The silver hairpin pierced his shoulder with precision. A muffled groan escaped him, his alcohol-laden breath catching abruptly. Without a moment's hesitation, I let out a heart-wrenching scream, shrill enough to pierce the night sky. Ah, thief! Catch the thief! Thud! Xiao Anhui staggered backward in pain, knocking over the round stool beside the bed with a loud crash. My scream reverberated like thunder, instantly alerting the entire side courtyard. Outside the door, chaotic footsteps echoed, lanterns flickered, and the maid's panicked shouts rose. What's happening? Has something happened to Miss Qiao? Quick, catch the thief! Protect Miss Qiao! The door burst open from the outside. Several maids and guards wielding sticks and clubs surged in, their bright lanterns and torches illuminating the room as if it were daytime. Xiao Anhui slumped on the floor in disarray, clutching his bleeding shoulder. The blood seeping through his fingers was strikingly vivid. His hair was disheveled, his robes torn, his face flushed crimson. His drunken eyes were glazed over, yet they held a pained, feral glare. He looked like a demon crawling out of hell. As for me, I huddled in the corner of the bed, wrapped tightly in the quilt, trembling like a fallen leaf in the wind. My face was deathly pale, devoid of any color, tears streaming down my cheeks as I sobbed until I nearly passed out. I kept murmuring, "Thief! There's a thief!" Scared me to death. To any observer, it was the pitiful sight of a young lady terrorized by a nighttime intruder who'd stolen her soul. The maids and guards who burst in froze when they recognized the thief on the floor. Their clubs hung limply in their hands, too stunned to strike or drop them. Mouths agape, faces ashen, they stammered, Your Highness? How could it be you?" The lady of Yongning Ho was quickly roused and hurried over, throwing on her outer robe. Upon entering and seeing the chaotic scene, her injured, disheveled son and me, crying as if my soul had left my body, her vision darkened, and she nearly fainted. This is outrageous." She trembled with fury, pointing at Xiao Anhui, her words stumbling out, "Anhui. What were you thinking, stumbling drunk into Wan chambers? Have you no shame left?" Surrounded by onlookers and berated by his mother, Xiao Anhui sobered up considerably. Pain, shame, and fury surged through him. He struggled to rise, but his injured leg and lingering drunkenness caused him to stagger, only deepening his disarray. I'm no thief." His face turned ashen as he tried to maintain his last shred of dignity, but his voice cracked and faltered from pain and fury. "This is my fiancé's room. What's wrong with me coming to check?" "Check?" As if struck anew by those words, I flung up tear-filled eyes, my voice shattering with piercing anguish, brimming with endless humiliation and lingering terror. "Is this how your highness checks upon a maiden's chamber in the dead of night, drunk and uninvited? Had I not awakened, had I not had a hairpin at hand for defense? How could I possibly live with myself now? I'd rather have been killed cleanly by that villain's blade just now." With that, I lunged violently toward the bedpost. "Stop her!" Lady Yongning, utterly terrified, shrieked. The old maidservant beside her scrambled forward, frantically grabbing hold of me. I collapsed limply into their arms, weeping until my voice cracked and my breath grew faint, as if death itself were upon me. This fierce display of resolve, this dramatic gesture of self-sacrifice, sealed the case against Xiao Anhui. His crime was clear, breaking into a lady's chamber under cover of night, his intentions far from chaste. The Dowager of Yongning watched me, sobbing as if my life depended on it, then glanced at her son on the floor, his face twisted in fury as he stubbornly defended himself. She felt the house of Yongning's honor had been utterly destroyed that night. She drew a deep breath, suppressing her rage, and barked sharply, "What are you all standing around for? Quickly carry the young master back and summon the physician. Whoever dares utter a single word about tonight's events will be beaten to death with sticks." The servants fell silent, then scrambled to support Xiao Anhui. As Xiao Anhui passed by me, his bloodshot eyes fixed on me with a piercing glare, filled with raging fury and utter disbelief at being betrayed. Huddled in the matron's embrace, I sobbed uncontrollably, refusing to spare him even a glance. "Xiao Anhui, you brought this upon yourself. Do you think I'm still the Qiao Wanyu you could manipulate at will? This time, I won't just strip you of your dignity, I'll ensure you lose any right to ever bother me again. After the late-night intrusion fiasco, panic gripped every corner of the Marquis's residence. Though the Marquis's wife imposed a gag order, news travels fast. Word of the young master drunkenly barging into his fiancée's chambers and being stabbed as a flower thief spread like wildfire throughout the estate. The servants now looked at me with pity and awe, their gazes toward Xiao Anhui, however, held added scorn and mockery. And I, seizing this very turmoil, began executing the escape plan I'd long plotted. From the very next day, I claimed to be overwhelmed by fright, developing a high fever, a relentless cough, and a complete loss of appetite. The imperial physician summoned to examine me diagnosed only emotional distress and evil wind invading the body, prescribing complete rest and tranquility, with strict avoidance of further emotional shock. Lying in bed, my face was as pale as paper, my eyes sunken deep into their sockets. My entire being rapidly wasted away, making me appear genuinely gravely ill. The Duchess of Yongning visited me several times. Each time, she was deeply shaken by the sight of me coughing as if my heart were being torn out. Her gaze toward Xiao Anhui grew increasingly displeased. "Wanyu, you've suffered so much," she murmured, sitting by my bedside, her voice tinged with remorse. "That good-for-nothing Anhui, I've given him a thorough scolding. He won't dare act recklessly again." I shook my head weakly, coughing as I replied, "Madam, I don't blame the young master. Perhaps he was drunk and momentarily lost his senses. But I'm plagued by nightmares every night now. I truly can't bear to stay in the mansion any longer." By the end, my voice cracked slightly, my eyes filled with the despair of utter resignation. Lady Yongning's brows furrowed deeply, clearly understanding my meaning. I was begging her to let me leave. She remained silent for a long while, observing my exhausted, wretched state. Then, recalling Li Cici's unpredictable, volatile temperament, capable of causing trouble at any moment, a flicker of wavering crossed her eyes. The Marquis's household was already beset by troubles. If something truly happened to me within its walls, the reputation of the Marquis's household driving its fiancé to death would be utterly irreparable. "What do you desire?" she finally asked, her tone tinged with concession. "I beg for your mercy, madam." I struggled to rise and bow, but she held me down. "There is a secluded, elegant annex to the Marquisate in the western part of the city. It would be ideal for quiet recuperation. I wish to reside there for a time, until my health is restored. Then we can discuss other matters." I avoided mentioning annulling the betrothal outright, using the phrase rest and recuperation instead. This offered her a face-saving exit while maintaining my image of being considerate. The Marquis of Yongning's wife pondered for a moment, as if summoning immense resolve. "Very well. Go to the villa first and focus on your recovery, far from all this turmoil. As for Anhui, I will keep a close watch on him and ensure he does not disturb you again." She paused before adding, "The annulment concerns the honor of both households, it is no trivial matter and requires careful deliberation. Focus on your recovery. I shall consider the rest." I knew she had relented. Though I hadn't secured the annulment papers immediately, escaping this suffocating Marquis's residence was the first step toward victory. Forcing a faint, weak smile, I said, "Thank you for your kindness, madam. You will remember this kindness forever." 3 days later, I packed a few simple belongings. Escorted by 2 honest, dependable maids and the maid Xiaolian, I left the Yongning Marquis's residence for the villa in the western part of the city. The moment the carriage rolled past the mansion gates, I lifted the curtain's edge for one final glance at this prison that had confined me for 10 years in my past life. My heart held no lingering attachment, only the lightness of liberation. The western villa proved serene and secluded. Hidden deep within a bamboo grove, its white walls and blue tiles offered respite from the Marquisite's clamor and oppression. Though modest in size, the courtyard was kept immaculately neat and elegant. Several waxflower plum trees bloomed profusely, their subtle fragrance wafting through the air and dispelling winter's gloom. No sooner had I settled in than Xiaolian brought warm medicinal broth. "Miss, drink this and rest well. No one will dare disturb you here." I took the bowl and drained it in one gulp. The bitter taste spread across my tongue, yet it sharpened my senses. Leaving the home mansion was only the first step. I must swiftly secure my future. When the Chow family fell into ruin, father had entrusted some private valuables and land deeds to an old friend who traded in Jiangnan for safekeeping. But later, with frequent wars, contact was lost. I vaguely recalled father mentioning that friend's surname and approximate address. This would be my foundation for survival. In the days that followed, I devoted myself to reading, calligraphy practice, and recuperating my health, and my complexion gradually improved. Simultaneously, I instructed the matrons to discreetly inquire about sailing schedules and routes to Jiangnan during their market trips, and I sent messengers to trace the whereabouts of that old friend in the south. Every few days, someone from the home mansion would come to visit, though it was really to report on my condition. I never asked about the home mansion, yet I always gleaned news about Xiao Anhui and Li Sisi from their scattered remarks. I heard Xiao Anhui's shoulder wound had healed, but his leg was recovering slowly. The imperial physician said he might truly limp for the rest of his life. This made his temper increasingly volatile, and he often beat and scolded the servants. I heard that the scars on Li Sisi's face have left permanent marks. Even with the finest ointments, they cannot be fully erased. She has grown increasingly silent, shutting herself in her room all day. On the rare occasions she ventures out, she hides her face behind a thick veil. Word spread that whenever Xiao Anhui and Li Sisi met, they would inevitably quarrel. In the heat of their arguments, Xiao Anhui would even lash out, calling her an ugly monster and a harbinger of misfortune. Hearing these reports stirred no emotion within me. The once beloved beauty who'd lost her radiance and the arrogant scoundrel who'd lost his pride, this mutual loathing was only fitting. I knew this calm was only temporary. Xiao Anhui would never let me off easily. I had to hurry, leave this murky capital before he tracked me down again. The tranquility of the villa didn't last long. Xiao Anhui found me. Seated in an ornate wheelchair pushed by a servant, he arrived with several attendants in tow, his pomp unchanged. Winter sunlight bathed him, yet couldn't warm the cold, predatory glint in his eyes. Compared to his last visit, when he'd been a disheveled mess, his complexion had improved considerably. Yet the look he gave me still carried that same obsessive certainty of victory. "Wan Yu, it's been a few days. You look much better." He strained to make his voice sound gentle, but his hoarse tone paired with his stiff expression only made it seem more insincere. I was pruning the winter jasmine in the courtyard. Hearing him, I didn't pause my work, my tone cold and distant. "Your Highness, I'm sorry I didn't come out to greet you." He maneuvered his wheelchair closer to me. Petals from the plum branches drifted down in the breeze, landing on his brocade robe. "I came to see you. This villa is lovely, but it is rather secluded. Are you settling in well?" "It's fine. It's quiet, suitable for recuperation." I set down my shears and turned to face him, my gaze serene and unruffled. "Your Highness, your injuries have not yet healed. It seems unwise to leave the manor for rest and recuperation and come all the way out here." "What is unwise about it?" Xiao Anhui raised an eyebrow, his tone tinged with displeasure at being rebuffed. "You are my betrothed. It is only natural that I should visit my own betrothed." The word betrothed pierced my heart like needles. Suppressing the disgust welling up inside, I replied coolly, "Your Highness seems to have forgotten that your late-night intrusion into my chambers became common knowledge. It would be best for us to maintain distance now, lest we invite further gossip and tarnish the reputation of the Marquis's household." Xiao Anhui's expression darkened instantly. "You still blame me?" "That night I was drunk, momentarily foolish. I've already admitted my mistake. What more do you want from me?" "I want nothing from you." I looked at him, enunciating each word clearly. "I only want you to leave me alone." "Xiao Anhui, what was between us ended long ago." "Ended?" He suddenly raised his voice, his chest heaving violently. "You say it's over, and that's that? If you hadn't rushed into the burning building to save me back then, why would I have been forced to marry you? Now that I've come back to life, I genuinely want to make it up to you, yet you're so ungrateful." "Come back to life?" He admitted it after all. A cold laugh echoed in my heart, yet my face wore a trace of scorn. "Make it up to me? Your compensation is barging into my room late at night? Is it dismissing me with those cheap gifts?" "Xiao Anhui, your so-called sincerity is nothing short of laughable. That's not what I meant. Xiao Anhui protested urgently, panic filling his eyes. I just don't know how to make you forgive me. Wan Yu, I know I wronged you in my past life. I shouldn't have treated you coldly, shouldn't have given all the family assets to Li Sisi, shouldn't have. Enough! I snapped, cutting him off sharply. The wounds of my past life were laid bare by his words, sending a chill through my body. I don't want to hear about those things again, nor do I want to bring them up. If you truly mean well, you should stay away from me and stop bothering me. Xiao Anhui froze at my outburst, his gaze complex as he looked at me, filled with anger, resentment, and a hint of hurt. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but was interrupted by the sound of hurried footsteps. Xiao Anhui. So you are here. Li Sisi burst in, hair disheveled, her face bare of the veil that usually hid it. The grotesque scar on her cheek glowed harshly in the sunlight. You swore you'd never see her again. You lied to me. She lunged at Xiao Anhui like a madwoman, clawing at his face with her nails. I ruined my face and my voice for you, and here you are flirting with this slut. I'll kill you. Caught off guard, Xiao Anhui was struck squarely, blood immediately streaking his face. Pain and fury surged through him as he roared, Madwoman! What are you doing? Servants rushed to pull them apart, and chaos erupted in the courtyard. Wails, curses, and the sound of struggling mingled into an unbearable cacophony. I stood to the side, coldly observing this farce. Watching them tear into each other, consumed by mutual hatred, I felt an immense sense of satisfaction. Just then, Li Sisi seemed to suddenly spot me. Her eyes instantly turned venomous. Ripping free from the servant's grasp, she lunged toward me. It's all your fault. You worthless bitch. If it weren't for you, Brother and Hui wouldn't have changed. I'll kill you. A sharp hairpin had appeared in her hand at some point, pointing straight at my heart. My pupils contracted sharply as I instinctively stumbled backward to evade. At the critical moment, a figure surged forward, blocking the path before me. A sharp thud echoed as the hairpin sank into flesh. Time seemed to freeze in that moment. Everyone froze in shock. Li Sisi stood rigid, staring at the hairpin half buried in the back of the person shielding me. The blood drained from her face. And the one standing before me was none other than Xiao Anhui. He slowly turned, his face as pale as paper. He stared at Li Sisi in disbelief, his lips parting as if to speak, but only a muffled groan escaped before he collapsed straight to the ground. Brother Anhui! Li Sisi let out a shrill scream, completely breaking down. She slumped to the floor, trembling all over. Servants rushed forward in panic, shouting and attempting to revive him. I stood rooted to the spot, watching Xiao Anhui lying in a pool of blood. My heart felt as though an invisible hand had clenched it tightly, cold and suffocating. Why did he save me? This question haunted me like a specter, refusing to leave my mind. How could someone as self-serving as Xiao Anhui risk his life for me? This must be another of his schemes, a staged act of self-sacrifice. But that hairpin had pierced him deeply. Had it been even slightly off target, it would have severed his heart meridian. This was no fake. Amid the chaos, the Ho family's servants arrived. They urgently carried Xiao Anhui back for treatment, while Li Sisi was arrested on the spot and locked away. The courtyard fell silent, leaving only the wet bloodstains on the ground and the lingering scent of blood in the air. I slowly clenched my fists, my gaze hardening into a resolute, icy stare. Whether Xiao Anhui's actions were genuine or feigned, this presented the perfect opportunity for me to sever all ties with them once and for all. If their bond was truly stronger than gold, then I would bind them together with my own hands, condemning them to eternal torment. Xiao Anhui was carried back to the Marquis's mansion for treatment, Li Sisi was locked away, and the villa finally regained its tranquility. But I knew this was merely the calm before the storm. I had to act swiftly and execute my final plan. Xiao Anhui's self-sacrificing act to save me made me realize his obsession with me had reached the level of paranoia. Simple distancing and rejection were utterly incapable of making him let go completely. The only permanent solution was to bind him and Li Sisi together forever, condemning them to torment each other in endless resentment, leaving them no energy to pursue me. I immediately summoned Xiao Lian and whispered instructions into her ear. Her expression shifted slightly as she hesitated. Miss, isn't this a bit too cruel? Harsh? I sneered coldly, a sharp glint flashing in my eyes. Compared to what they did to me, what does this amount to? Just do as I say. If anything goes wrong, I'll take the blame. Xiao Lian clenched her jaw, finally nodding. This servant understands. My plan was simple: sow discord between Xiao Anhuai and Li Sisi, driving them to complete enmity, yet binding them together by some unavoidable circumstance. Step 1, I had Xiaolian use a shopping errand as cover to secretly contact a young maid named Chen Tao, who had once suffered harsh treatment from Li Sisi. Chen Tao harbored deep resentment toward Li Sisi. I offered her a substantial sum to help relay a message. I had Chen Tao tell Li Sisi that during his convalescence, Xiao Anhuai had repeatedly confided to those around him that she was the one he couldn't let go of. Had it not been for the Marquisite's reputation, he would have abandoned all caution to be with her. He also claimed I was cunning and manipulative, using him merely to escape my predicament, and that I was utterly unworthy of genuine affection. These half-truths were precisely what would stir Li Sisi's resentful and unwilling heart. Sure enough, within days, word came that Li Sisi had repented and reformed. She claimed to pray for Xiao Anhuai day and night, even beginning to take medicine voluntarily to restore her health, all in hopes of tending to him at his bedside. Though the Duchess of Yongning despised her, she relented, perhaps out of remorse for the injury Li Sisi had suffered for Xiao Anhuai, or perhaps seeking an excuse to appease her son. She actually gave her permission to perform menial tasks in Xiao Anhuai's courtyard, serving him from a distance. The fish had finally taken the bait. Step 2, I forged a farewell letter in Li Sisi's handwriting. Its words were heart-wrenching, acknowledging my profound sins, confessing my disfigured face made me unworthy of Xiao Anhuai, and understanding his feelings for Qiao Wanyu. I begged only for one final meeting to repent in person, vowing to depart for distant lands never to return. I had calculated Xiao Anhuai's mindset perfectly. Arrogant and harboring a complex, lingering possessiveness toward Li Sisi, he would never refuse such a final farewell. I had Chen Tao slip the letter discreetly beside his pillow while delivering his soup and medicine. As expected, upon reading the letter, Xiao Anhuai's heart stirred. Though he despised Li Sisi's current state, their past affection remained. Coupled with the guilt he felt after his rebirth, he couldn't refuse this request for a final meeting. He immediately sent word to Li Sisi, arranging to meet in his study on the evening of the 8th day of the 12th lunar month to settle their unfinished business. The 8th day of the 12th lunar month was the day the Marquis' household traditionally hosted a banquet for the clan elders. With the house bustling with people and affairs, security would be lax, the perfect opportunity to act. I had Chen Tao prepare a potent sedative beforehand, one that would render its victim limp and disoriented. This drug was difficult to detect and left no trace afterward. I instructed Chen Tao to slip the drug into their wine when Xiao Anhuai and Li Sisi met. Simultaneously, I had word delivered to several elders, those most concerned with reputation and quickest to anger, stating that urgent matters required their presence in Xiao Anhuai's study after supper. Everything was under my control. Around the hour of high, word came. Just as I had anticipated, several elders accidentally stumbled upon Xiao Anhuai and Li Sisi in his study, clothed haphazardly, locked in an embrace. Both were dazed and limp, babbling incoherently. The scene was utterly unsightly. It was said the uncles present trembled with rage, pointing fingers and cursing them as shameless and bringing shame upon the family, nearly striking them on the spot. The Lady of Yongning fainted immediately. Marquis Xiao Chun, enraged, snatched an inkstone from the table and hurled it at them. Had he not been restrained, he might have beaten Xiao Anhuai to death right then and there. Li Sisi was dragged out by several elderly maids, wailing all the way, yet the potion had robbed her of even the strength to struggle. Though Xiao Anhuai remained immobilized, his consciousness seemed to sharpen. Facing the hall filled with elders and their looks of contempt and fury, his face turned as white as paper, his eyes brimming with despair and utter disbelief. He would likely never understand, even in death, how things had come to this. Seated beneath the lamp in the side courtyard, I listened to the news brought by Xiao Lian. The pages of the book in my hands trembled slightly before settling back into stillness. It was over. Everything was over. Having committed such a disgraceful act in full view of all, tarnishing the Marquis family's century-old reputation, Xiao Anhuai and Li Sisi had no room left for redemption. Forget annulling the betrothal. To quell the clan's fury and salvage their dignity, the Yingning Marquis' household would likely bind them together immediately. Seal their fate with a legitimate marriage to silence the gossip. Didn't Xiao Anhui crave deep affection with Li Sisi? Wasn't Li Sisi utterly devoted to Xiao Anhui? Then let them have their wish. Let them marry. Locked together for life. The scandal of the study affair crashed like a boulder into a lake, sending towering waves crashing through the marquisate and across the entire capital. The clan elders were furious, jointly demanding the Yongning Marquis severely punish this pair who had brought shame upon the family. Within the capital's circle of nobles and officials, mockery and contempt for the Marquis' household were incessant. Even storytellers in the streets and alleys spun tales of the Marquis' heir and his cousin's secret meeting in the study, which people listened to with relish. The Yongning Marquis' reputation was utterly ruined by Xiao Anhui and Li Sisi. To quell the public outrage and salvage a shred of dignity, the Marquis and his wife made the most respectable decision without hesitation, to marry Xiao Anhui and Li Sisi immediately. They hoped this marriage would bury the scandal, telling everyone, these two were meant for each other, merely acting rashly, now they were simply true love finding its way. How laughable. When the news of the marriage reached me, I was packing my belongings. Xiao Lian, clutching gossip she'd gathered from the Marquis' mansion, grinned from ear to ear, "Miss, you should have seen the gloom at the Marquis' residence." When the young master heard he was to marry Li Sisi, he flipped the table and swore he'd never wed that madwoman. Li Sisi threw a fit too, saying she'd rather die than marry a cripple. I smiled faintly, folding a plain-colored gown and placing it in the trunk. Making a fuss? Too late for that now. They should have known this day would come when they did what they did. And then? I asked. After that? Xiao Lian curled her lip, her tone dripping with schadenfreude. What else could they do? They were forced into it by the Marquis and his wife. The Marquis declared that if they dared resist, he'd break the crown prince's other leg and banish Li Sisi from the Marquis' estate to fend for herself. When Li Sisi heard that, she stopped her tantrums. They say she cried for days. I wasn't surprised. Li Sisi seemed fierce, but she cherished her life above all else and valued her status as the Marquis' daughter most dearly. If she were truly forced to leave the Marquis' residence and become a helpless orphan at everyone's mercy, how could she bear it? As for Xiao Anhui, no matter how furious or unwilling he was, he couldn't defy his family's pressure. He couldn't leave the Marquis' protection either. That crippled leg had long since stripped him of any capital for defiance. This marriage, they didn't want it, but they had to go through with it. The wedding date was set hastily, within the first month of the year. Everything was kept simple, with barely any proper betrothal gifts or dowry. Across the entire capital, almost no one came to offer congratulations except the Marquis' household. On the wedding day, I sent Xiao Lian to discreetly gather intelligence near the Marquis' residence. Upon her return, Xiao Lian vividly recounted, "Miss, you should have seen the scene." The young master was practically dragged through the ceremony by several servants. His face was ashen throughout, his gaze so dark it could kill. The look he shot at Li Sisi was like staring at his father's murderer. Li Sisi wore a wedding gown that didn't fit her properly. The scars on her face couldn't be concealed by thick layers of makeup. Her eyes were hollow, like a marionette. She nearly stumbled during the ceremony. No laughter or well wishes filled the air, only palpable awkwardness and oppression. Those who came to witness the ceremony were merely spectators of a spectacle, Xiao Lian added. I heard that after the ceremony, the young master tossed Li Sisi into the bridal chamber and retreated to his study, drinking himself into a stupor and smashing things all night. I lifted the cup of clear tea from the table and took a gentle sip. The fragrance of the tea was delicate, yet it couldn't suppress the surging satisfaction within my heart. This was the fate they deserved. Once, they had trampled on my pain to perform their so-called deep affection, now, bound together by fate, they could only torment each other in endless resentment. Within days, news of their quarrels spread throughout the Ho residence. Xiao Anhui, already violent due to his crippled leg, now forced to marry Li Sisi, vented all his resentment and fury upon her. He forbade Li Sisi from leaving the house or receiving visitors, even allowing servants to vent their frustrations on her indirectly. The slightest inconvenience would trigger his curses, and in moments of rage, he would resort to violence. Li Sisi was no pushover either. Gone was her former docility, she had become sharp-tongued and spiteful, bickering incessantly with Xiao Anhuai. When he called her an ugly monster, she retorted by calling him a cripple. When he struck her, she clawed at his face, wailing and throwing tantrums that left the entire Marquis' residence in turmoil. Their courtyard became a forbidden zone within the mansion. No one dared approach, for it echoed constantly with shrieking arguments, crashing objects, and the woman's wails, a sound that made one's hair stand on end. The Yongning Marquis and his wife had long since given up on this troublesome pair. Out of sight, out of mind, they simply moved to a separate courtyard, leaving the two to fend for themselves. The servants, ever opportunistic, trampled upon this disgraced couple. Skimping on their provisions and neglecting their needs became commonplace. Li Cici's facial scars, exacerbated by prolonged depression, constant crying, and inferior ointments, grew increasingly grotesque and hideous. She shut herself in her room day after day, staring blankly into the mirror. At times, she would suddenly fly into a frenzy, smashing every reflective object in sight, her behavior bordering on madness. Xiao Anhuai's leg ailment, worsened by his pent-up emotions, showed little sign of improvement. Rainy days brought excruciating pain that kept him sleepless, fueling his increasingly volatile temper. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and when drunk, he would either beat or berate Li Cici, accusing her of ruining his life. They were like two beasts trapped in the same cage, tearing at each other, inflicting torment, dragging both their lives into an abyss of no return. Whatever semblance of deep affection they once shared had long been eroded by daily resentment and loathing, leaving only raw, naked hatred. Hatred for the other ruining their life, hatred for their own blindness, and most of all, hatred for this inescapable fate. Hearing these reports, my heart remained utterly unmoved. All of this was entirely of their own making. I packed the last piece of luggage, tucking the token my father left me close to my heart. News from Jiangnan had arrived, an old friend of my father's had been found. He was willing to return the valuables and land deeds my father had entrusted to him, and even invited me to develop my life in Jiangnan. The time to leave the capital had finally come. On the day I departed the capital, the weather was exceptionally clear. Sunlight pierced through the clouds, bathing the cobblestone paths in a warm glow. Dressed in a simple blue cotton gown, my hair pinned back plainly, I wore the plain silver hairpin my father had left me. Carrying my packed belongings, I walked out of the villa in the western part of the city. Xiao Lian followed behind me, her face full of anticipation for the future. "Young lady, are we really leaving?" Xiao Lian couldn't help but glance back toward the villa. "Shall we not wait for news from the home mansion?" I shook my head, my pace unbroken. "It's unnecessary. Everything here no longer concerns me." Hozhou Manor's fate was sealed long ago. Xiao Anhuai and Li Cici would spend their remaining years tormenting each other in endless resentment. As for me, I could finally break free from it all and begin a new life of my own. The carriage had been waiting at the crossroads. The driver, sent by my father's old friend to escort me, was dependable and steady. I climbed aboard, lifted the curtain, and cast one final glance at this city, the prison that had confined me for 10 years of my past life, the vessel of all my pain and hatred. My heart held no lingering attachment, only the lightness of liberation. "Let's depart," I murmured softly, lowering the curtain. The carriage moved slowly, heading toward the southern docks. Wheels rolled over the cobblestone road, producing a rhythmic clatter, like a farewell to me, or perhaps a declaration that the past had ended. As we journeyed south, the scenery gradually grew more picturesque. Far from the capital's clamor and oppression, the air itself felt fresh and sweet. Leaning back in the carriage, I watched fields, rivers, and villages rush past the window, my heart filled with 1,000 emotions. In my past life, I was like a wild grass imprisoned in a dark corner, struggling desperately in despair before being ruthlessly destroyed. But in this life, through my own cunning and ruthlessness, I severed the bonds of ill-fated ties and broke free from the shackles of fate. At last, I could soar like a bird toward the sky that belonged to me. After nearly a month's journey, we finally reached Jiangnan. The spring of Jiangnan was indeed as beautiful as father had described. Vast fields of rapeseed blossoms spread like a golden ocean, clear rivers murmured as they flowed, and willows along the banks unfurled tender green branches that swayed in the breeze. The air was filled with the intoxicating fragrance of flowers and the earthy scent of soil. Father's old friend, Mr. Su, was a kind-hearted elder. He had been waiting at the dock and greeted me with evident relief. "Niswanyu, you must have traveled far. If your father knew you arrived safely, he would be overjoyed." I bowed deeply to old Mr. Su. "Uncle Su, thank you for your kindness. All these years, I'm deeply grateful for your care of my father's belongings." "It was the least I could do," Uncle Su said, helping me up with a smile. "Your father was my dearest friend. How could I betray his trust? Come, I've arranged lodgings for you. Rest well first and adjust to the time difference." Uncle Su led me to a riverside residence with blue-tiled roofs and white walls, adorned with ornate beams and painted pillars. The courtyard was filled with flowers and plants, creating an elegant and tranquil atmosphere. Standing at the window, I could see the river flowing gently outside and the distant green mountains, a truly pleasant view. In the days that followed, I recuperated while learning the ways of commerce from old Master Su. With his guidance, the wealth and land deeds my father had left behind were swiftly transformed into tangible capital. Drawing on memories from my past life and knowledge gained in this one, I opened a silk shop in Jiangnan. With a keen eye for quality and a commitment to integrity, the shop soon flourished, becoming a renowned establishment in Jiangnan. I gradually established myself in the region, forging friendships with like-minded individuals, and my life grew rich and joyful. In my leisure time, I would stroll along the riverbank, visit tea houses to listen to storytellers, or play chess and chat with old Master Su. Free from Xiao Anhuai's clutches, Li Sisi's resentment, and the home mansion's scheming and deceit, this peaceful and liberated life was something I had never dared to dream of in my previous existence. Occasionally, I would recall people and events from the capital. I remembered Xiao Anhuai's obsessive gaze, Li Sisi's venomous expression, and the suffocating hypocrisy of the home mansion. Yet these memories no longer caused me pain, they had transformed into warnings, reminding me to cherish the life I now possessed. Later, through a merchant from the capital, I learned of Xiao Anhuai and Li Sisi's current circumstances. It was said their lives had grown increasingly miserable. Xiao Anhuai's leg ailment worsened until he could no longer walk, confined to a wheelchair day after day. His temper flared to the extreme, lashing out at Li Sisi with blows and curses at the slightest provocation. Li Sisi, meanwhile, had completely lost her mind. She spent her days in a delirious state, either wailing at the air or trading blows and insults with Xiao Anhuai. The entire marquisate avoided them like the plague. Finally, on a night of relentless rain, Li Sisi took advantage of Xiao Anhuai's drunkenness. She stabbed him to death with a pair of scissors, then threw herself into the river. The Yongning Marquis' residence became the laughingstock of the capital, its fortunes rapidly declining. When I heard the news, I was watering flowers in the courtyard. The watering can paused in my hand for a moment before I continued watering. There was no thrill of revenge, no pity, only a sense of calm. Their fate was their own choosing. What goes around comes around, karma is inescapable. Setting down the watering can, I gazed at the blooming flowers in the garden, a look of release spreading across my face. The hatred of my past life had long faded with time. In this life, I no longer let resentment bind me. Instead, I chose to let go of the past and embrace a new beginning. The Jiangnan sun, warm and radiant, bathed my body and illuminated my heart. I knew the road ahead was long, but I no longer feared it. Through my own efforts, I would live a life of brilliance, making my journey as vibrant and luminous as Jiangnan's spring, a tapestry of blossoms, warm and bright. The story ends here. Thank you for your companionship. See you in the next chapter.